All right, today we're going to talk about flares. As you see on the little toolbox here, I have several different types of flares, several different brands of flares. I have the yellow jacket that's all in one that a lot of people actually like because they don't have to keep up with anything. Then of course I have the Navac orbital flaring tool. I have the Hillmore orbital flaring tool, and I have the Navac battery powered flare tool. So the reason for this video is to show you guys that not all flare tools make the same type of flare, and actually which one does make the best flare. But before we can get on to flares, I want to talk about deburring. Deburring is probably one of the most important parts of flaring, because if you don't deburr the copper, you could have an edge that could cause you to have a leak. So we have several different flaring tool or deburring tools here. We have the pencil type, where you stick it in here like this, and you deburr the copper like this. And this is something that a lot of us are used to, right? Well, the problem with this, and I didn't realize it till recently, that as you deburr the copper, you actually put scratches on the inside of the pipe, which in turn, if they're too deep, you could actually cause a leak. Then my son actually turned me on to a deburring tool that machinists use, right? Stick it in there like this, and you just deburr the copper like that. And what happens is it just deburrs the copper, but it doesn't put any scratches inside the pipe, right? So I don't know how well I did that, but it works just like the pencil type. Of course, we want to turn our pipe over like this so we don't get shavings inside the copper, which could go and hit a strainer. So I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so that does a pretty good job. But then he turned me on to something else, which is really, really cool, is the countersink deburring tools that you can buy at Harbor Freight for like $9. Comes 3 in a pack. Here's what the, who makes it? Hold on a second. Oh, Warrior makes these. You can get them at Harbor Freight, and like I said, they come 3 to a pack, less than $9. So you just stick your any drill or impact, and then you just take it like that. I don't know if you can see the shavings coming off there, but they're coming off there, and it looks like that when you're done. So the coolest part about this is you can deburr the ridge of the copper, but you don't put any scratches inside the copper. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and deburr this end right here with this tool, and then I'm going to deburr the end of this one. And I know it's with this one because this end's all scratched up, so I'll be able to tell which deburring tool is what. So we're going to go ahead and deburr. See how hard time I have with this thing? But it is deburring the copper. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Navac battery power flare tool because it's just the easiest. So you want to take your finger like this and hold in and push in on the copper to where it's just hitting that stop, right? And you can do a flick test to see if that little stop moves. Then once you do that, you just stick it in there like that. You push the little black button to let the head go out. It's going to stop, and then it's going to come back in. So we just made a flare, right? And this is the one that was made by the battery powered that countersink deburring tool. So there's no scratches on the face of the flare. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna do it like that. That stop's not moving. Then I'm gonna take it, push in on the little black button right there, let off of it. And we just let it finish up. And once it finishes, then we'll open it up and see what we actually have. See if there's any little scratches in there. And there are, I can see them right there, right towards the inside of the pipe. I don't know if you can see them, but they're definitely there. Okay, and then here's the one that we did with the countersink deburr. So it actually does a pretty damn good job. And then what we're gonna do after we make our flare is we're gonna take our flare gauge here and see it's lettered there. That's the 3/8. I've got it upside down, but you can see it. And it goes and it stops against that ridge. We made a good flare. That one's not as good for whatever reason. But anyway, this one is. So that's a good flare. Now let us go. We'll go ahead and we'll use this to deburr the copper. Damn, that works pretty damn good actually. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use everybody's favorite flare tool, like that, because it's all one piece. I'm gonna make sure that it's in the 3/8. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna push up against the stop like that. And while we got it pushed up against the stop, we're gonna go ahead and close it in, close it. It's stopped. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down. Tighten it down, and then we're going to go ahead and turn the head here. Now, the problem with this one here is you'll never consistently make the same flare twice. So if, let's say, you're on the phone and you're having a heated argument with somebody and you kind of get upset and you just keep torquing down, problem is your flare is going to be too big. Or if you think, well, I've got it, and then, so let's see what kind of flare we made with this one here. All right, so that's the one we just made. Now it's too big, so it won't go in the flare gauge. And also you can tell that it was made by this yellow jacket because the ridges around the copper at the outside. So this one is too big. So that's the problem with this tool right here, is you'll never consistently make the same flare twice, right? So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to use, now we're going to go ahead and use the Hillmore. And the Hillmore, I like these bars here because they do have a stop. And even though it's a little more work than the yellow jacket, it gets the job done pretty well, right? Because it's got a stop here. But you have to be careful with this stop, right? I don't know if you can see it, but you see how the stop is angled up? Well, that means your pipe is too far up into this means it's too far up in there. So we just kind of want to put it in there till it just barely hits the stop, right? And then once that's there, okay, we're good. Once that's there, then you go ahead and you put the head on, and then you tighten it down like this. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go till we hear it click, or you'll feel it click. If you don't hear it, you'll feel it. All right, so it just gave way, so we know the flare should be good. So we know the flare should be good. We're going to open it up, turn it all the way out. You just loosen it here. All right, once you get it out of there, then we're going to take it to our flare gauge, and then we're going to stick it in there, and it made a good sized flare. Okay, so I mean, it's just a little small, but nothing compared to the Yellow Jacket. Okay, so if I twist it enough, I can get it to go through there. Right, so that one did okay compared to that one. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and use a Navac. I'm gonna go ahead and deburr this one here. Does pretty good. I like it. It's a lot easier and a lot faster. Boy, dang, putting them some shavings out. All right, so now I'm gonna go to the Navac. The thing I like about the Navac compared to the Hillmore is if you look at these two stops, look at the difference. See, the one on the Hillmore is real thin, but the one on the Navac is thicker. Also, on the Navac, you have this little groove here, where on the Hillmore you don't. And what will happen is that groove actually helps that stop from moving too much, right? On the Hillmore, if you notice, the Hillmore moves pretty good. So if you stick it up in there too much, you take a chance of sticking your pipe up too much and it'll be too big. So that's why you have to be careful. If you're using the Hillmore, you have to know your tool and definitely have the flare gauge, right? But with the Navac, they make it a little harder to push it up in there too far because it has that little groove there. So let's go ahead and stick the piece of copper into the 3/8 to right up against it. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and stick the head on. Let's stick the head on there, tighten it up. We're going to go ahead and when it clicks or it gives way, we know to stop. All right, did you hear that? So it just gave way. So we're going to go ahead, open it up. Okay. I'm going to take it out of there. Now, that's the flare made by the Navac flare tool. I'm going to get my little gauge here, and then we're going to stick it in there. So that one goes right up against that ridge and it stops. And also, let me show you the difference between the two. This was the one made by the Yellow Jacket. Well, one of those two was. Can't remember. Okay, so this one was made by the Hillmore. That was made by the Yellow Jacket. Okay, look at the difference in the piping between the Hillmore and the Navac right there. Right, so the Navac, when it comes time for making a flare, actually does a really good job. So, you know, it just is what it is. One more thing I want to show you guys, when you're cutting your copper, because you know what? Where's my tubing cutter at? Ah, right here. I screwed up. You know how I screwed up? I screwed up because I forgot to put the flipping flare nut on this flare, right? I forgot to put the flare nut on it, so I'm gonna cut it off. Now, I just wanna show you guys, because some of you guys don't realize, I see a lot of guys going all the way out here trying to cut the flare off because they don't realize that these little spaces in between the wheels are actually for your flare, right? So you stick your flare in like that, stick your flare in like that, and you just turn, right? If you do that, then you don't have to, that's all you get cut off right there. Right? So, and then we'll go ahead and use this tool right here, this deburring tool. There's a lot of dang shavings come off this. Look at that. We'll go ahead and we'll make one more last flare with the Navac. Right. I love this thing. I mean, you could actually do it with your eyes closed if you wanted to. And if you're on the phone and you're not concentrating, the only thing that you have to keep in mind is when you stick your tubing in here, that it's pushed right up against there, against that stop, and the stop doesn't move. So you can be on the phone, you can, you know, have your, see, it just made a perfect flare. So there you go. That's flaring 101. But for you guys that are making a lot of flares, I really suggest that you go and you get these deburring tools by Warrior. Like I said, my son mentioned it to me, and he's big into CNC and stuff, and the machinists use these deburring tools to deburr the holes after it's machined. So what the hell? I'm gonna try it. But anyway, that's it. That's flaring 101. You guys have a good one, and we will see you on the next one. All right, so people ask about 1/4-inch copper, how good this actual tool actually does. So we're gonna try it. I've already deburred it. I'm gonna push it up against there, push against the stop. And I'm gonna go ahead and, people's biggest mistake when they first start using this, for whatever reason, is they want to grab hold of both sides or whatever, or they don't push it up in there deep enough, and their flares is always too small. So that's why you really, really need this flare gauge, because it doesn't matter how good of a flare you think you make, or how good a flare tool you actually have. Without this tool, it really doesn't matter. When I'm teaching my classes, I always do this flare demo so guys can actually see that, hey, there's more to making a flare than just stick it in there and tighten it down. I carry this little box around with me, and I mean, I have, you know, you can see right here, every one of my classes I do these flare demos. So I've got the 1/4-inch loaded in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and now I think the batteries, we're at 75%, and I think we're gonna need to charge it here before long. And the reason I say that is because once it gets so low, I don't think it really performs as well as it should. So let's see. So here's a 1/4-inch I just made, and so if I really push down in there, it goes through. But if I just, you know, push it against there, it stops. So let me try it on I've already deburred this one here. So let me go ahead and try it on the orbital flare tool here. Okay. We're stopped against it. So now we're going to go ahead and push this against the all right, so I've got it tightened down. We'll see how it does. All right, so it stopped. So we're going to loosen it up. Okay. didn't even make one.
You had it on the wrong.
I had it on the wrong one. See, doesn't matter how good you think you are, you're gonna make mistakes. Okay, now we're on the right one. See, I was distracted. All right, so it just gave way. Okay, now it's made a flare. So that's the flare that was made by the orbital flare tool there, and it actually did a good job because it's in the flare gauge, and I'm pushing against it, as you can see, and it doesn't go through. So in this case, on the 1/4" copper, the orbital did a better job than the battery powered, but I think that the only reason it didn't do a good job on the battery powered is because the battery's a little low. So it does pretty good. Now, the one thing that we haven't talked about is oil. So after you make your flare, you want to put a thin coat of oil on the back of your flare, and on the face of your flare, and on the face of the flare that's at the unit. So that way, when they meet up, if there's any little micro scratches in there, it's going to help seal those scratches up. So there you go. And then of course you want to use, when you get done with that, you want to use a torque wrench. The reason we use a torque wrench is because not everybody 10 pounds of torque is going to be the same, or 30 pounds of torque, or whatever the flare nut calls for. So always make sure you use a torque wrench, because with the price of our 410A nowadays and the cost of labor, this tool right here is going to pay for itself. And then always have something like this as a backup, just in case something happens to this tool. So, but doesn't matter which one of these you have, that's the most important tool. So anyway, all right, you guys have a good one, and we'll see you on the next one.